Something to be aware of when working with functions inside of Python is that the objects you pass in as arguments are passed in by reference. What this means is that the argument will be pointing to the exact same location in memory, and this can cause a lot of problems for new users who don't quite understand what's happening and why things are being modified or not being modified when they call a function. So here I have a simple number swap function, which is going to take a number argument, and then it's going to assign a new value to that number and print the number to the screen. When I call this function, I'm first assigning the variable myNumber, the number 5, and then I'm printing out the value of my number. I then call the number swap function, and finally I'll print out the value after the number swap occurs. So here I'm going to execute the code, and you can see that before is printing out a value of 5, which is what we expect. So that's immediately after I've assigned the value to my number. I'm then calling the function number swap, which assigns the argument num, the number 77, and prints it out. And finally, after calling the number swap, I'm printing out my num variable again. And you can see that it's back to a value of 5. So in this case, with a number, the value before and after the function call has not been changed. However, when I pass in a list and perform an operation on it, so in this case I've created a function called passByReference, and it expects a list to be passed in. Inside of this function, I then append 3 numbers to the list. But I'm not returning anything. I've simply modified the list. And this is very similar to what I did in the number swap function. Again, I create a list with the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to print out that list. Then I'll call the passByReference function and pass in my list. And finally, I'll print out the list after the function's been executed. When I run this code, you're going to see a slightly different result. So here, my before is 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's the list that I've created. However, the after isn't keeping the list as it was before. It's now added the values 4, 5, and 6. And this is because the object myList is being passed by reference. Both the myList variable and the aList argument will be pointing to the same object in memory. And this is the idea of passByReference. If I didn't want the list to be modified inside of my function, I would first have to copy the list. And this is simply done by creating a new variable and using the list built-in function. Now any of the operations I perform inside the function should be done on the copy of the list. So here I'm appending to ALT-list instead of aList. When I execute the code now, you can see that my before and after are the same. So I'm no longer modifying the list. Try to keep this in mind as you write your own functions, as this will keep you from accidentally changing the values of variables unexpectedly and causing errors further down the road.